thought. Oh, yeah, he told me he's ready. I call this meeting of the Schertz-Cibolo-Universal City Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:32. This is a little different. We've kind of moved to, now we have mics and, oh, there's the camera. We're making our way back up to hopefully where we usually sit. And so we have at this time, our roll call, Priscilla doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to say that all board members are present at this time. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you. So like I was saying, we are inching our way back, and we are glad to be here with our called board meeting, and then we were going to go into a training after that. At this time, we have public comments, which there are no public comments. So we're moving on to new business, and our first new business item is discussion of a learning management system, LMS. So when you hear the abbreviated, that is what it stands for, Learning Management System, presented by Dr. Edwards and Ms. Burkholder.
Yes. Thank you, President Dresbeck, members of the board, Dr. Ely. As a discussion item, we're bringing to you a learning management system. A learning management system serves as with the expectation of possibly bringing it back July the 28th or 21st or 28th of 2020. Learning management system is basically a platform that teachers and students use to facilitate instruction and can contain curriculum documents, lessons, additional resources, portals to submit assignments, assessments, and more. Using a single sign-on, all of the student courses appear in one place, which eliminates all of the various sign-ins sign-ons to different providers. The district with an LMS will house all their resources in this one place, even for in-person instruction, and having an LMS will make the transition into remote learning much smoother. We felt like this is a pretty significant move for us, especially in light of the possibilities of remote instruction, or the probabilities of remote instruction, rather, in some form or fashion. And so, again, we wanted to bring this to the board as a discussion item for tonight. I know Dr. Burkholder is on Zoom, I believe, and Ms. Kovacs was part of the committee that looked at this. If there are any additional questions.
Mr. Pivito, would you push your mic down and turn the green button on?
Used to not having to do that.
I know. How about that?
So you're saying there's one sign-on for multiple sites? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we sent out an RFI for this. There were initially 5 companies. All of these are proven vetted companies. We narrowed that to 3, and a committee took several days to review those, as well as opportunity to kind of use those as a sandbox and explore those, and then came back and offered their feedback on this. So all of these are proven platforms that are in various uses, or various districts and other educational entities across the state. If you've had a student in college recently, they've been on some type of learning management system.
So, yes, sir, Mr. Pivito. And
Okay. All
a
right.
lot of teachers will have their own websites, or Sephora, or Eduphoria, or other types of platforms, Google Classroom. And so this puts everything in one place. It makes it easier, obviously, for the student and the parents who are wishing to help, and for our teachers as well. That's a place we'll be able to house our curriculum.
Okay.
It's something that we've needed in this district for a long time, and I'm happy that we're able to move forward in this process.
Okay, thank you.
What's the transition and setup time for this?
Ms. Kovacs, could you perhaps, since you've been the most involved with this in this committee, kind of talk through that?
Absolutely. So we've been told it depends on which system we end up going with in terms of how many weeks it will take to set it up. The thinking is that we'll probably have access right around the time school starts, which is not ideal because we also then still need to train folks and get all of our information ready for students in the system. So we will probably have a few weeks that we're in transition right at the beginning of the year, still using Google Classroom, which we used in the spring and is familiar to most of our families, and then we'll be transitioning to the LMS as quickly as we can.
You know, with a single sign-on, I know it's done by platform, so do we have enough staff, or are we going to get some support to handle the sign-on situation? Because usually it's done by a profile of the person, and then you say these individuals have access to these platforms. So do we have that nailed down, or are we going to get some help doing that?
I believe the technology folks are already working on that in preparation, knowing that this is coming.
Okay.
So we certainly had Dr. Burkholder there and some of our back-end folks to make sure that whatever Active Directory and whatever it is we're using will work. They're really evaluating the back end of all that.
I know because I set up single sign-ons before, and it takes time. You have to just right, or it can really turn into something you don't want it to turn into. So you just have to be careful with it, and then the maintenance on it can be a little bit interesting.
Sure. There's a few things to take into account, and Mrs. Kovacs said it well. We'll have some training that we have to do, but we have some data migration we're going to have to do as well. So we will work to get this up as soon as possible, but we will transition into it in a smart manner.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you.
Is it on?
You have access to textbooks in there, so they're not, the kids aren't having to chase down different teacher websites.
That is correct.
Okay, now.
Yeah, one of the things that we heard from families this spring were that there were a lot of platforms that they needed to keep up with for different students, had multiple teachers with multiple platforms, and the idea here is to make this much more simplified for families, one platform, and that I think all three of the ones, actually all three of the ones that we were reviewing in depth allowed for migration of all of those things into the same platform so that we can still use a lot of the tools that we've been using, but through this LMS.
I've seen my voice using even now, I'm a apologist, and I really think that's a great idea because of that.
Yeah, I was going to say our dual credit classes already have this. They're used to that at the high school level. Two things. Number one, just I know y'all mentioned committee. Can y'all elaborate just so people know that we had a
Sure.
wide
The
array?
committee was, I believe, 30 of our educators from across the district. It included teachers, administrators, technology staff, content coordinators. We had a wide variety of folks reviewing these and providing input on what they felt was most important in an LMS.
Thank you.
And part of that review process was a sandbox. They got to actually run demos of the program and try them out
That's
from
important.
an end user perspective. And so it was very important for us to be able to test drive, so to speak, each of the products. We all know what it's like to talk with folks about the functionality, but being able to see it
Yeah.
was
Oh,
important
yeah,
for us.
I definitely. When you listen to even TEA, they'll say LMS. So when people hear those, I've heard that come out of even Maras's mouth about, the integrated system and all that. So I think people will get familiar with that. Second one, I know we had a bumpy rollout of maps a little bit. And so I know you've already mentioned that that's going to be, the timing isn't our favorite. So I'm just asking everyone for patience, parents as well as our staff. There's going to be a lot on their shoulders this year, but we are doing what is best for this district as we purchase this, and we want to make the right decision. So I just ask for patience with all that.
I appreciate that, President Dreisbach, and that's one of the things when I said we're going to roll this out in a smart manner. An LMS can do a number of things. We're going to need to decide which ones are mission critical for us right away. and implement those, and then come back and make it a more comprehensive system for us later on. So that is part of the work that we're going to do. As we said, there's going to be professional development components that's going to be a part of that as well. But we will have the full functionality, and one of the great things is having it available, and we've got some really technologically savvy teachers who will get in there and figure some things out and help pull some others along eventually. But we will be very cognizant of that. We would love to have a little bit more time. We would love to have a lot of things different about the situation we're currently in. But we know that this is going to move us forward. It's not going to be a silver bullet or anything, but it is going to be very important for us moving forward as a system.
Any other questions?
Mr.
discussion?
Westbrook?
Oh, Mr. Westbrook, sorry.
So you have,
I can't see you.
we're at the RFI level or the RFP?
RFI.
We're at RFI, and then we go to the RFP
We're going to make a recommendation.
tonight?
No, sir. We're going to come back at our next meeting, which will either be the 21st or perhaps if we have a meeting to hire before the 21st, we'd like to bring a recommendation at that time. We are rounding out the selection process with that committee that Mrs. Kovacs described.
Through Canvas, Schoology, and Brightspace, those are the final three?
Schoology,
Schoology.
Canvas, and Brightspace. That's all right. Everybody who ever says that word the first time says Schoology.
Okay, Canvas, Schoology, and Brightspace. And the recommendations y'all made earlier were provide a consistent one-stop shop for students, parents, and staff that integrates curriculum, assignments, publishers, products, media grades, parent access. So out of the 30 people that were on the review team, how many were strictly parents, like with no educational background whatsoever?
I don't believe any were on the committee that aren't also educators.
Okay. You can see how that might have been beneficial because educators have certain skill set that a parent, especially probably in a lower socioeconomic setting, might not have. So what's easy for an educator may not necessarily be as, I'm just thinking maybe a parent. Anyway, it's already done,
Yes, sir.
but it seems like it would have been beneficial to have parents without some educational experience, from my standpoint. I thought there was one other question, LMS. And the approximately 300,000 is set aside?
Yes, we'll be paying for that through instructional materials allotment or IMA funds.
Okay.
So that
So-
would not be district funds.
How many other districts around us have an LMS?
Probably most.
I
Most
would
have-
say most of America has an LMS
Okay.
at this time.
And
From
the-
my educational background. That's just me speaking, but I'm sure
I would say particularly for districts of our size and larger, an LMS is pretty common.
and now they're really common with remote learning for all sizes they're going to.
And so does one sign-on, is that one sign-on per household, per student, per parent? Or what do we?
Mrs. Kovacs?
So for students, they'll log in through ClassLink the same way they log in for all of their other current educational textbooks and things like that are all through ClassLink. Student access will still be that way. Parents will actually be able to have a single login and then view all of their students in one page. So it will be a drop-down menu where they can see, their oldest child, their middle child, and their younger child, and they just click on each one to see what assignments are there, grades, and that sort of thing.
Kind of like what they're used to now with our grading, that they can click on the different kids.
Right.
In most systems, we'll set up notifications, very robust notification system, SMS, email, based on parameters that parents can check and select.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Again, we would be bringing that back at our next meeting, which the next one we have right now scheduled is a budget workshop on the 21st of this month. And we may need a meeting before that for personnel purposes to hire additional staff. So,
Okay. Next item on our agenda is discussion kindergarten assessment waiver application for 2020-2021 school year, presented by Ms. Kovacs.
All All right, hello again. With the passage of House Bill 3, districts are required to test all kindergartners using a state-approved kindergarten reading diagnostic screener at the beginning of the school year. The waiver we're seeking for the kindergarten waiver that's in front of you is designed to allow students to use a district-approved resource. In our case, we would be continuing to use NWEA MAP to assess students' needs for just one calendar year, 2021. After that time, we would be moving to the commissioner's approved reading diagnostic, which is called TextKia. The reason why we're requesting this waiver is multifold, actually. One of the big reasons is that all of our teachers are going to be, as we just mentioned with the LMS, learning a lot of new things very quickly at the beginning of the year. And so delaying using TextKia allows us to also delay training for them for a little bit while we manage our learning in a new way this year. The other reason we would really like to consider this waiver is because the MAP data that we were not able to get at the end of the year is leaving us without a lot of information for our students moving into first grade from kindergarten. So having a common assessment where it works apples to apples year over year, we can really compare data from our beginning of year kindergartners last year to our beginning of year kindergartners this year is really important to us. So we would like to consider this waiver moving forward. This is a discussion item, and we will bring it back to you for approval later in the month. With that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Okay. All right. At this time, we are going to go into closed session. This board will now adjourn into the closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551074, authorization to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. The time is 5:48. We are back in session at 5:59. Next on our agenda is a request for board action, employment of the Samuel Clemens High School Associate Principal, presented by Ms. Cannon.
Yes, the position of the Samuel Clemens High School Associate Principal is replacing a budgeted position for 2021 as discussed in closed session.
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the employment of Samuel Clemens High School Associate Principal for the 2020-2021 school year.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is a request for board action, the employment of the Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, presented by Ms. Cannon.
Yes, the position of Curriculum Professional Development Director as discussed in closed session is replacing a budgeted position for the 2021 school year.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the employment of Curriculum and Professional Development Director for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. All right, at this time, this meeting is going to be adjourned. And the time is, wow, 6 o'clock.